My House of Horrors Chapter 361 to 370. Of the 5 who fainted, one of them was involved in the design of the futuristic theme park. Chen Ge closed the door and showed the pictures on his phone to Director Luo. Compared to them, our third-generation theme park is at a disadvantage. Every picture was a different scene. It was a combination of imagination and unbelievable decorations, giving it a futuristic feel. Director Luo was shocked. Honestly, if he had the choice, he would have preferred to visit the futuristic theme park. You purposely scared them until they fainted after noticing something was wrong with this person. Director Luo looked at the phone and did not raise his head. That was an accident. I'm not blaming you. In fact, I think you did a good job, but I'm worried that you might have left something behind. Director Luo put down the phone. After all, every picture in this can be considered a trade secret. Don't worry, I used my phone to take pictures, so there won't be any data records. Also, when I took his phone, I used my own sleeve. Even if he asked the police to check his fingerprints, they wouldn't be able to find any concrete evidence. Chen Ge sounded like he was talking about something normal. Director Luo was speechless. If Chen Ge had even considered the possibility of fingerprints, what else did he have to worry about? Recently, there have been many people slandering the haunted house on the internet. They hired paid posters to leave negative reviews. Initially, I didn't think much of it until this person appeared. Chen Ge scrolled through the pictures on his phone. Look at these messages. After reading it, Director Luo merely nodded. The futuristic theme park has several shareholders. One of them should have sensed the threat we pose, and that's why they are playing these dirty tricks. Don't worry about that. I'll help you stop them. You just need to focus on developing the haunted house. Quote. Director Luo, there are a few more pictures. Perhaps the commotion at our haunted house has gotten too big, so they're planning to add a new haunted house project. It's called Haunted House Reality. Quote. When Chen Ge said that, Director Luo's expression shifted. They're planning to open a haunted house as well. Yes, they plan to build a haunted house that combines reality and virtual reality. I've seen it online before. When visitors visit it, it feels like they're inside a horror movie. How does it compare to your haunted house? Now, Chen Ge's haunted house was New Century Park's main attraction. If Chen Ge's haunted house lost, then New Century Park would really lose its competitive edge. No matter how real a virtual thing is, at the end of the day, it's still fake. Everything I have here is real. Chen Ge's haunted house was never afraid of being compared with others. I feel like there's more to your words, but it doesn't matter. Just do it boldly. If anything happens, I'll be there. Director Luo flipped through the photos until he reached the last one. His brows furrowed slightly, but he soon relaxed. Did you take this photo from his phone? The last photo Director Luo mentioned was a group photo from a party. At the time, Chen Ge had taken this photo to show his employees. Anyone who saw the person in the photo did not have to hold back. Yes, is there a problem with this photo? I saw an old friend. Director Luo returned the phone to Chen Ge, and his expression was natural. As long as you have confidence in your haunted house, we don't need to be afraid of them. You don't need to worry about splitting the visitors because we have something that they don't. Quote. He stood up to look out the window at New Century Park. Don't limit yourself to this small Zhejiang. Your haunted house is unique, and that is our capital. As long as the name spreads, wherever the internet reaches, that will be our source of potential customers. In terms of foresight, Director Luo, who had been in the business world for many years, was much more experienced than Chen Ge. They'll adapt to the situation, but we won't stay where we are. Coincidentally, I have something to show you. Director Luo turned the laptop around and signaled for Chen Ge to scan the QR code on the screen. What is this? After scanning, Chen Ge realized that he had downloaded a small app called Haunted House. After clicking on it, there was a brief introduction of each scenario. Next to it was the number of people who had experienced the scenario, cleared time, and ranking. I've hired someone to customize this app for you. Director Luo took out a measuring bracelet from the drawer. Try it on. After Chen Ge put on the bracelet, he bound it to the app. He clicked on the personal tab, and it showed his heart rate, blood pressure, and breathing rate. The data might not be accurate, but at least it can scare many people. Actually, the most important function of this bracelet is to locate you. Every bracelet has its own number. If a visitor faints inside your haunted house, you only need to look up on the computer to locate them and rescue them in time. Quote. Director Luo was probably a bit afraid of Chen Ge, so he purposely emphasized this function. The app can be used on its own, or it can be used with the bracelet. I'll discuss with Shu how to use it, and I'll be able to confirm it in 3 days. This app designed for haunted house had many functions. Visitors could check the ranking and the latest clearing progress. There were even previews of new scenarios and exclusive decrypts. For all the haunted house fans, this app was more like a community that brought them together. Director Luo, you and I have the same idea. I've wanted to design an app like this for my haunted house for a long time. Chen Ge was ambitious. A 3-star scenario was just the beginning. His goal was to build the country's first horror theme park. If you think it's useful, then I'll give you the bracelet. The number is 000. Director Luo also revealed a smile. Perhaps it was Chen Ge's influence, he felt like he had become younger. At 8 p.m., Chen Ge left Director Luo's office. With Director Luo's full support, he had nothing to worry about. The futuristic theme park will open in 1 month, so I don't have much time left. Chen Ge returned to the haunted house and placed the recorder, hammer, and comic into his backpack. Then he called Gao Rushui. He planned to contact Gao Rushui that day. Perhaps he might find clues related to Western Zhejiang's Medical University's underground morgue. The phone rang for 10 seconds, but no one answered. Chen Ge hung up and called again. I have an appointment with her tonight. Did something happen? There was still no answer, so Chen Ge called a 3rd time. If there was still no answer, he planned to call Heshan and Gao Rushui's father. Did she really meet with danger? Chen Ge waited for 7 seconds. Just as he was about to give up hope, Gao Rushui's call was suddenly connected. He held his breath and did not speak immediately. He waited for the person to speak first. After 1 second, an unfamiliar woman's voice came from the phone. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. This was the first time that Chen Ge had heard this woman's voice. The person should be around the same age as Gao Rushui. There was a trace of impatience and resentment in her voice. I'm Gao Rushui's friend. I want to ask her out for dinner tonight, Chen Ge said casually. Where is she? She went to wash her hair. I'll have her call you later. Okay. After the call ended, Chen Ge sat on the bed in the break room with his backpack. If this was a normal date, Gao Rushui wouldn't mind washing her hair or showering, but she's clearly in a state of panic. The reason she asked me out was to solve the problem of her roommate. In a situation like this, with her personality, she wouldn't purposely dress up. Chen Ge felt like something had happened to Gao Rushui. 5 minutes later, Gao Rushui called. He picked it up, and Gao Rushui's voice came from the other end. I'm going to leave now. The door opened and closed. Gao Rushui seemed to be walking down the corridor alone, and the static on the phone lessened. Where shall we meet tonight? Tell me a place, and I'll be there now. Hearing that it was Gao Rushui, Chen Ge sighed in relief. As long as she was fine. Then come to our school. Come through the western gate, there are fewer people there. We'll meet behind the education block at the old campus. Gao Rushui seemed to hide in the bathroom alone. You'd better come quickly. I feel like something is wrong with my roommates. Did something happen again? During the afternoon class, Lu Shenxian slept the whole afternoon on the table. She went to the underground warehouse at night, so it's normal for her to sleep in the morning. Chen Ge did not think there was anything wrong with that. If she was really sleeping, I wouldn't have told you. Gao Rushui's voice was low. She was feeling very insecure. In the middle of the second class, my pen fell to the ground. When I bent down to pick it up, I realized by accident that Lu Shenxian had not been sleeping. Her eyes were wide open, staring at the mirror inside the drawer. Mirror. Yes, to be more precise, she was looking at herself in the mirror. Gao Rushui reconstructed the situation for Chen Ge. Her eyes were bloodshot, And it felt like she was filled with hatred toward the person in the mirror, but wasn't the person in the mirror herself. Your roommates seem to be possessed. Don't stay in the dormitory tonight. They might attack you at night. Okay, let's meet at school first. I still have a lot of things to tell you. After hanging up, Chen Ge was about to leave when his phone rang again. This time, it was Captain Yan. Isn't this too much of a coincidence? Of all times. Quote. Pressing the answer button, before Chen Ge could say anything, he heard Captain Yan's voice. I need you to come to the station immediately. I have something important to tell you. Now. Yes. Very important. Quote. Captain Yan's tone was serious. Chen Ge thought about it and agreed. I'll be there in a minute, but I have something else to do tonight, so I can't stay too long. It won't take up too much of your time. The call soon ended. Chen Ge took a taxi to the station. On the way, he called Gao Rushui again, but this time, there was no answer. When it was almost 8 p.m., Chen Ge arrived at the station. Once he entered, he noticed that the atmosphere was not right. The officer at the door recognized Chen Ge and led him to Captain Yan's office. He pushed the door open, and other than Captain Yan, there were two other people, Ol. Wei and Master Bai. Yes. The door closed, and Captain Yan signaled for Chen Ge to sit down. Last night, the three of you entered the mountain and found the two children, but I sent people into the mountain this morning to follow the route that you said. They searched for 6 hours, but they couldn't find the village. It was Master Bai who led the way last night. You'll have to ask Master Bai about these things. Coffin village had been unlocked, and Chen Ge temporarily did not want to return to that ghost village. The route I said was correct. Master Bai leaned against the chair. He had slept for a whole day. I looked at the pictures that your team took after they returned. The route is correct. After crossing the valley, we'll reach Coffin village. But the problem is, after crossing the valley, we didn't see the village. Captain Yan sat at the table. What happened to the three of you last night? I can't remember, but I do remember seeing a village. Ol. Wei had his head lowered. He had done a good deed, but he looked so down. The children have been saved. We can take our time to look for the village. There's no need to rush. Chen Ge stood to the side. He did not even sit down, he was ready to leave at any moment. If it was just child trafficking, we can take our time to investigate, but the problem now is, Captain Yan took out an evidence bag from the drawer. There was a gun inside. Ol. Wei's gun is missing a bullet. After the technician's inspection, they found that the gun was used last night, but Wei has no memory of that. Do you know what this means? Chen Ge shook his head. He knew that it was Ol. Wei who fired the gun, but Chen Ge had no idea why Wei fired the gun and what he encountered. Ol. Wei has been a police officer for many years. To be able to force him to fire the gun, it means that the situation had reached a point where he had to fire the gun to solve it. Did you run into any danger like that last night? Captain Yan stared at Chen Ge, waiting for Chen Ge to answer. Chen Ge glanced at Master Bai and answered casually, no. Hearing that, Master Bai's hands slowly loosened. Then, do you have any memory of Ol. Wei firing the gun? I heard the gunshot in the village, but at the time, I wasn't with Ol. Wei and Master Bai. The gun is the most important thing to a police officer, and it cannot be touched by an outsider. Now that we can confirm that the gun was used, whether it was Ol. Wei who fired the gun or not, this is very serious. If you have any clues, you have to tell me as soon as possible. Captain Yan looked at Ol. Wei, who had his head lowered, and sighed. The doctor said that Wei's condition is temporary memory loss caused by strong stimulation. No matter what, I will get to the bottom of this. Understood. Chen Ge nodded and hesitated. Captain Yan, Dr. Chen from Zhujiang's children's home was also in the village at the time. He has been following us. Ol. Wei's shooting might have something to do with him. We are currently searching for this man in the city, so we should have a result soon. Then Captain Yan rummaged through the drawer. Moments later, he took out a map with pictures. There's another reason why I called you here today. He pointed at the pictures on the map. Take a look for yourself. Each picture is the scene of an eye-gouging murder. Chen Ge looked at the pictures on the map, and his pupils narrowed. Over the past 2 days, there had been 5 eye-gouging murders in Zhujiang. If he drew the locations of the 5 murders into a circle, he would realize that the center of the circle was New Century Park. Chen Ge had run into 2 members of the Society of Strange Tales at Coffin Village. At the time, there should have been another member from the Society of Strange Tales staying in Zhujiang to deal with the police. Initially, he had thought that the eye gouging case was related to Coffin Village, but from the looks of it, the Society of Strange Tales' real goal was probably to deal with him. Zhongya and Shuyin were both asleep, so the only specter that Chen Ge could use was Yan Danian, who was known as the strongest lesser red specter but only had a support function. In Coffin Village, the Society of Strange Tales has gotten a good grasp of my background. They now know that Zhongya is still asleep, and the situation is not good for me. Chen Ge looked at the map on the table and did not say anything. For him, the situation was not good, but for the Society of Strange Tales, it was on the verge of collapse. Wu Fei was killed by the female ghost at the door of Coffin Village. The black phone did not send a message to inform Chen Ge of his death, but there was a small detail. After the female ghost picked up the black robe that Wu Fei wore, she was very excited and left. Chen Ge had suspected that Wu Fei had hidden a part of his consciousness on the scapegoat and then placed the scapegoat somewhere else. The female ghost was so happy after she found the black robe, so there was obviously something important inside it. Perhaps there was a scapegoat hidden inside. If that was the case, then Wu Fei would rather die than fall into the female ghost's hands. The Society of Strange Tales' plan for Coffin Village had failed, and they had lost 1 member. Now, there were only 2 members left. Of the remaining 2, one was being pursued by the police, and the other was fighting with Dr. Chen at Coffin Village. It seemed like they would not rest until one of them was dead. Chen Ge knew that the Society of Strange Tales was not having a good time either, and he was afraid that they would do something desperate. After all, for a madman, anything was possible. 5 murders surrounding New Century Park. This shouldn't be a coincidence. Their next target might be you. Captain Yan put the map away. We've found the killer, and we'll probably apprehend him in 3 days. In that time, you'd better not stay at the park at night. Understood. Chen Ge finally understood why Captain Yan had sent him to the station. The police were there to protect him. Captain Yan asked some more questions of Chen Ge, and during the questioning, he subconsciously revealed some information about the eye gouging case. Chen Ge remembered them all. It was not until 9 p.m. that Captain Yan finally allowed him to leave. After exiting the station, Chen Ge took out his phone. Yao Ru Shui had not called him. If she was anxious, she would have told me. Did something happen to her while she was waiting for me? Chen Ge had a feeling that Gao Ru Shui's reaction earlier was a bit weird. He got into the taxi and rushed to Western Zhujiang Medical University. On the way, he called Gao Ru Shui several times. Similar to before, there was no answer on the first 2 calls. It was only on the 3rd call that the call was answered. You've been waiting for a long time, haven't you? I'm at the old education block. Come quickly. My roommate is becoming more and more abnormal. Gao Ru Shui's voice was tinged with anxiety. She sounded like she was hiding somewhere. If you're in danger, I suggest you call the police immediately. Compared to me, the police are more trustworthy. Chen Ge urged the driver to drive faster. I'm worried that my roommate's soul has been swapped with something. If I call the police, they won't believe me. My 2 roommates might not be able to return. Gao Ru Shui seemed to know many things, and that was obvious from her tone. Set your phone to call the police and try to go to crowded places. I'll be there in half an hour. After hanging up, Chen Ge held the phone and started to think. Every time I call Gao Ru Shui, she only picks up on the 3rd call. When I called her earlier, it was very quiet around her. Why would she go to such a quiet place when she might be in danger? Sitting in the taxi, Chen Ge called Heshan and Dr. Gao. At 9:30 p.m., Gao Ru Shui looked at the decreasing number of people in the study room. She called Chen Ge again. I'm sorry, the number you've called is busy. This was the 23rd time she had called Chen Ge that night, but each call indicated that the number was busy. Did something happen to him? Gao Ru Shui borrowed her friend's phone, but there was still no answer. It was like the number was cursed and could not be reached. Last night at the dormitory, When the 3 people came in, I called everyone in my contact list. Only Chen Ge's message was different from the others, but why is it the other way around now? Everyone else's phone is fine. Only his phone is busy. Who is he talking to? Quote. Gao Rushui was lost in thought as she held the phone. Suddenly, someone patted her shoulder. Xiao Shui, let's go back to the dormitory. Lu Shenxian called Gao Rushui to go back with her. She behaved the same as usual, be it her expression, her actions, or even her tone of voice. However, this was what scared Gao Rushui. She knew in her heart that the person standing before her might not be her roommate. You guys go first, I still have something to do. Gao Rushui put away her phone and flipped through the book on the table. You've been so distracted lately. Don't tell me you really have a boyfriend. Lu Shenxian leaned in close to Gao Rushui. The familiar gesture, even the joke was the same as before. Gao Rushui's best friend was right next to her, but when Lu Shenxian moved closer, her body involuntarily became stiff, and she felt a trace of coldness. Then go back to the dormitory when you're done, I'll be leaving first. Lu Shenxian took the book and left Gao Rushui. After she left the study room, Gao Rushui finally calmed down. I definitely can't stay in the dormitory tonight. Gao Rushui took out her phone and called Dr. Gao again. Dad, will you be home tonight? I want to go home for the night. Quote. I'm at the hospital now, and I probably won't be home until midnight. Why do you suddenly want to go home? My roommate has been acting weird lately. I'll tell you when I get home. Okay. Gao Rushui walked out of the classroom with the book and water bottle. She saw Lu Shenxian and Ma Ying talking at the staircase like they were waiting for her. Avoiding the two, Gao Rushui left through the staircase on the other side of the corridor. She did not return to the dormitory. Instead, she took the book and water bottle and hailed a taxi to go home. This is so strange. Why can't I get through to Chen Ge, and his line is always busy? Taking out her phone, Gao Rushui called Chen Ge for the 24th time. There's still no answer. Never mind, I'll leave the school first. A strange emotion spread in Gao Rushui's heart. She was very anxious, and everything that she saw was suspicious. Sir, please drive faster. I'm in a hurry. The enclosed space made it hard for Gao Rushui to breathe. She rolled down the window, and the wind messed up her hair. Her eyes scanned the crowd, but Gao Rushui did not feel any excitement. She felt like someone was looking at her from somewhere. You're a student at Zhejiang Medical University, right? Don't wander around at night. It's been quite chaotic lately. The driver held the steering wheel and said casually, there have been several murders in the city these past few nights. The victims were horrible, and I heard that their eyes were gouged out. I'm not trying to scare you, but before the killer is caught, you'd better stay at school. Quote. The driver probably meant well, but his words changed in Gao Rushui's ears, and her mind started to wander. Murder. A few in a row. Why did he tell me to go back to the dormitory? Is he the killer? In Gao Rushui's eyes, the driver's normal face turned dark, and his every movement seemed to be hiding malicious intent. Gripping the phone, Gao Rushui did not reply. She turned to look out the window and occasionally sneaked glances at the driver. 20 minutes later, the taxi arrived at Shishahu. This was the place that Dr. Gao had bought 2 years ago. After paying the fare, Gao Rushui got out in a hurry. It was almost 10 p.m., and the number of people in the area had decreased. Shishahu was one of the more luxurious areas in Zhejiang. It had a beautiful environment, and it was next to Shishahu, but the location was rather isolated. Entering the area, the streetlights gave off a faint white light. Gao Rushui hurried forward with her head lowered. She did not dare to look at the bushes on either side, and the greenery at night looked quite creepy. Crap, the book and glass are in the taxi. She had been in a hurry when she got out, and she had accidentally left the things in the taxi. The glass was fine, but she needed to use the book in class. With that in mind, Gao Rushui became even more agitated. The taxi had already left, and she could not go back to get it. She glanced at the time on her phone. It was almost 10:00 at night, and there were almost no other people in the neighborhood. However, the lights in the buildings in the distance were still on, which made Gao Rushui feel at ease. Xisha Lake had its own little garden. After passing through it, Gao Rushui arrived at the third building. She lived on the 13th floor of the third building. The neighborhood is so quiet today. Gao Rushui felt a chill on her exposed arms as she entered the corridor. She clapped her hands and waited for the voice-activated lights to come on before she dared to move forward. Compared to the past, the neighborhood didn't seem to have changed much, but Gao Rushui felt that something wasn't right. The words that the driver had said to her in the car flashed through her mind. Murder, eye gouging, and so on. It was like a rope slowly tightening around her neck. Could the driver be the murderer? I feel like his tone is very strange. The serial murders happened in different places, and the killer was able to commit the murders in one night. He must have used a vehicle, and the killer is most likely a taxi driver. Could it be that the deceased sat on the seat that I sat on? Could there be a bloody tool hidden inside the trunk? Quote. The more Gao Rushui thought about it, the more afraid she became. She would turn back to look every few steps, afraid that someone would suddenly jump out from behind her. Leaning against the wall, Gao Rushui pressed the button. When the door opened, the voice-activated lights went off. Darkness suddenly descended, and Gao Rushui's body froze at the door. She could see a dark human silhouette inside the elevator. Clap. The sound of hands clapping came from inside the elevator. A man in a raincoat brushed past Gao Rushui and headed down the corridor. A raincoat. It's not raining outside. Quote. The wide brim of the hat covered the man's face. He was not tall, and the oversized raincoat covered his legs and shoes. The man left in a hurry, and there was no blood or anything suspicious on the raincoat. Is it going to rain tonight? Gao Rushui glanced at the weather forecast on her phone. There would be showers after midnight. What a strange person. Gao Rushui only dared to enter the elevator after the man left. The light shone down the corridor. She watched the elevator door slowly close, and an indescribable pressure suddenly appeared. She felt like a fish that had been abandoned on the shore, and it was difficult to even breathe. I'd better not take the elevator. Gao Rushui used her hand to block the closing elevator door. She walked out again, and she had a very bad feeling when she looked at the elevator. Running into the emergency exit, Gao Rushui started to climb the stairs. The stairs did not seem to end. When she reached the 6th floor, she heard the first floor's emergency exit creak like someone else had entered the emergency exit. Someone is following me. Gao Rushui was instantly reminded of the strange man in the raincoat, and at the same time, the words that the taxi driver had said appeared in her mind. The man in the raincoat is the serial killer. Could it be that he has just killed someone inside this building? Gao Rushui's face blanched. I accidentally ran into his murder. Does he want to come after me? Initially, Gao Rushui purposely slowed down to try not to make too much noise, but under the pressure of fear, she ran faster and faster. I need to get home as soon as possible. Footsteps came from downstairs. There appeared to be another person coming up the stairs from the emergency exit. The distance closed, and Gao Rushui ran as fast as she could. Her home was on the 13th floor, and there seemed to be 5 floors between them. Gao Rushui ran until she reached the corner of the 13th floor. She pushed open the emergency exit door and rushed into the corridor. She searched for the key in her pocket, and the footsteps in the corridor became clearer. The person was following her. Her fingers were stiff. Gao Rushui tried twice before she managed to insert the key into the keyhole. She turned the key to open the door outside. By then, the sound from the emergency exit was getting closer. It was only 1 floor away from her. Quick! Gao Rushui found the key to the door inside. She shoved it into the keyhole, and the footsteps turned into running. The person had also reached the 13th floor. The spring moved, and the door inside opened. Gao Rushui ignored the door outside and rushed into the room. She turned around and closed the door. Then she leaned against the door and started to gasp for air. I'm finally home. Adjusting her breathing, Gao Rushui leaned against the door and looked out through the peephole. He didn't follow me. Finally, Gao Rushui sighed in relief. Without even changing out of her shoes, she turned on all the lights in the room. The light chased away the darkness and eased her nervousness. The front door isn't closed, but it's too dangerous to open the front door now. What if the person is hiding in the corner that the peephole can't see? Closing the curtain, Gao Rushui picked up the fruit knife from the coffee table. As a medical student, she was familiar with the various vital points of a human body. With the knife in hand, her heart finally calmed down. Sitting in the living room, Gao Rushui took out her phone to call Chen Ge. This was the 25th time she had called Chen Ge, and the call was still busy. Still not working. It's already 10 p.m. Gao Rushui looked at the messages on her phone. She tried many ways to contact Chen Ge, but there was no reply. Did something happen to him? Every time I call him, the line is busy. No matter who he calls, he wouldn't be on the phone for so long, unless, Gao Rushui seemed to have thought of something. Unless he's talking to a ghost. Quote. Gao Rushui remembered clearly that there had been a problem with her phone before. Last night, when her two roommates returned to the bedroom, something had followed them. At the time, she had used her phone to send messages, and everyone had replied with a look back. Only Chen Ge's phone had the system's normal reply. The shadow behind me last night doesn't appear to be able to change anything related to Chen Ge. It doesn't appear to be able to replace Chen Ge to reply to me. A thought crossed Gao Rushui's mind, and the phone slipped from her fingers to the ground. The ghost can't change anything related to Chen Ge, so it can't imitate Chen Ge to reply to me. Therefore, when I call Chen Ge, the line is busy, and I can't get through. In other words, during the period when I was unable to contact Chen Ge, it was probably the ghost who was controlling my phone. If that's the case, when I used my own phone to call my father, the person who answered the phone might not be my father. It's a ghost pretending to be my father and replying to me. Gao Rushui broke out in a cold sweat. She had deliberately avoided her roommates and sneaked back home because she was worried that something might happen. But in the phone call just now, she had personally told her father that she was going to stay at home tonight. If her guess was right, then the ghost already knew that she was not in the dormitory, but in her own home. Staring at the phone on the ground, Gao Rushui didn't dare to move. She suddenly felt cold. Just as she was thinking, the phone screen on the ground suddenly lit up. Someone was calling her at this time. The phone vibrated on the cold floor, and the sound was unsettling. Gao Rushui hesitated for a moment before picking up the phone. It was Dr. Gao who had called her. Gao Rushui's fingers hovered between answering and hanging up the call. In the end, she chose to answer. What happened? Why did you take so long to pick up? The familiar and warm voice gave Gao Rushui a sense of security that she hadn't felt in a long time. My phone is on silent, so I didn't see it. Gao Rushui gave the excuse that she had prepared earlier. She wanted to test the person on the other side of the phone. Just as she was about to ask something that only she and Dr. Gao knew, Dr. Gao spoke first. It's good that you've reached home safely. Recently, it's been quite chaotic at night. Stay at home. I still have something to do, so I'll probably be home later. Okay, I understand. The call ended. The person on the other side of the phone seemed to have guessed what she was going to do and did not give her the chance to ask any questions. It feels like something is watching me. Gao Rushui had the urge to use the fruit knife in her hand to cut the screen of the phone. She took a few deep breaths, and in the end, rationality won out. The phone might be controlled by a ghost, and there might be a murderer hiding outside the door. What should I do now? She was on the 13th floor, so it was impossible to leave through the window. Gao Rushui was not sure if the murderer had left or not. Even if he had, the staircase might not be safe. If I use the phone to call the police, it might be a ghost who answers, and it might not be the police who come in the middle of the night. I can call for help, but the occupancy rate at Shishahu is very low. Whatever, I'll have to try this method. Gao Rushui walked to the window, pulled back the curtain, and looked out. It was only 10 p.m., but the residential area was already dark. All the lights in the buildings had been switched off. How is this possible? In the dark residential area, only the streetlights reflected off Shishahu, providing some light. Am I hallucinating? Gao Rushui was even more afraid. She wanted to scream for help, but something was obviously wrong with the residential area. Her surroundings were dead, and there was a strange atmosphere. Looking out the window, the strange feeling that Gao Rushui had in the taxi returned. She felt like she was not safe, and every corner seemed to be hiding danger. Gao Rushui pulled back her gaze to look at the neighbors next to her. In her memory, there was no one living on either side of her house. The window of the house on the left was sealed shut, and the interior had not been renovated. The window of the house on the right had some dead flowers. It was obvious that they had not been taken care of for a long time. Gao Rushui was disappointed. As she moved her gaze, she glanced up to the right, at the house on the 14th floor. At the edge of the window, there seemed to be a human face whose eyes had been gouged out looking at her. Bang! Gao Rushui staggered back, and her back knocked into the cupboard. Dead body. Did the murder really happen in this neighborhood? And it's right above my room. Quote. She grabbed the knife and used the tip to pry open the curtain to look at the house on the top right. The human face had disappeared, and there was only a row of clothes hanging there. Am I seeing things? After a moment's hesitation, Gao Rushui still used her phone to call the police. The police's reply was flawless. Everything was normal, but something was not right. Gao Rushui pulled on her hair. This feeling was similar to when she was facing her roommate. The person before her was the same as usual, but it felt like it was not her. Everything around me is normal, including my father's voice, the phone, the taxi driver, and so on, but why do I feel like something is wrong? What's wrong? Quote. Gao Rushui grabbed the phone and called Chen Ge for the 26th time. After the dial tone rang twice, the system's synthesized voice came through. Call back later. Gao Rushui felt like she had heard it wrong. That was not what the synthesized voice said, but what else could it have said? After hanging up, Gao Rushui looked at her pale face on the screen. It was her own face, but the expression was different from hers. She's smiling. Gao Rushui tossed the phone on the sofa. She stood in the empty room with her hands twisted together. Time ticked by, and Gao Rushui maintained her posture as she stood by the window. She did not dare to go anywhere. Be it the bedroom or the bathroom, they gave her a very bad feeling. The ghosts already know where I am. Does that mean that my two roommates who have turned into ghosts will come over soon? Outside the window, the sky was covered in dark clouds. It was going to rain soon. Normally, my father would be home already at this time. Holding the fruit knife, Gao Rushui pulled back a corner of the curtain and turned to look at the family on the top right. The face that had been gouged out did not appear. There was only a row of clothes on the balcony. The mental tension exhausted her. Leaning against the windowsill, Gao Rushui looked out at the darkened residential area, and for some reason, her heart started to panic again. The whole of Shishahu was dark. Only her room was brightly lit. Due to her fear, she had switched on all the lights in her room. This feeling was like walking through a dangerous forest with a torch. The light brought her a sense of security, but it also exposed her location. It's too obvious. Just as Gao Rushui was hesitating whether to switch off the light or not, she suddenly saw something flash past the entrance of the residential area. She stared in that direction, and Gao Rushui's heart skipped a beat. There was a woman with a blurry body standing at the entrance. She looked like her roommate. Why is she here? Gao Rushui was so focused on the entrance that she did not expect the phone on the sofa to suddenly vibrate. The screen glowed faintly, and the buzzing made her teeth chatter. Running to the sofa, Gao Rushui picked up the phone. It was her roommate calling. Should I answer it or not? After some hesitation, Gao Rushui accepted the call. Lu Xian. It's already past 10:00. Why haven't you returned to the dormitory yet? Lu Shenxian's voice came from the phone. Where have you been? I'm outside. I won't go back to sleep tonight. Be careful when you're alone. Recently, our area has been very chaotic. There's a psychopathic murderer who specializes in digging out people's eyes. Lu Shenxian's voice was a little scary. Alright, you don't have to say any more. I know all of this. If there's nothing else, I'll hang up first. Gao Rushui hung up and ran to the window with her phone. She looked at the entrance of the neighborhood, but the blurry figure had disappeared. Could it be an illusion as well? When Gao Rushui shifted her gaze to the ground floor of her house, her face turned pale. She didn't know when the figure had run to the ground floor of her house. Did the light attract it? Gao Rushui hid behind the curtains, feeling cold all over. Just as she was hesitating whether to turn off the lights or not, her phone vibrated again. He looked down and saw that it was a call from Lu Shenxian. The two figures were just downstairs. This time, Gao Rushui did not dare answer the phone no matter what. She tossed the phone on the sofa and used the cushion to cover the screen, but the vibration still made her nervous. The phone rang for about 10 seconds before she hung up. Then, Lu Shenxian sent her another message. The dormitory manager asked where you are. The school has been very strict lately. You'd better go back to the dormitory. Quote. Gao Rushui did not reply. She switched the phone to silent mode. She had just said it when Lu Shenxian's second message came. Xiao Shui, are you in trouble? Do you need me to come and find you? Where are you now? Quote. The message on the phone looked normal, just a friend worrying about Gao Rushui's safety. It did not appear to have any other meaning, but combined with Gao Rushui's current situation, the situation was completely different. At that moment, there was a ghost standing below Gao Rushui's building. With her fingers shaking, Gao Rushui switched off the phone. She pulled back the curtains, and the figure was still standing there. Has that thing been calling me all this time? Her eyes stared at the figure downstairs. Gao Rushui wanted to get a better look at the person's face. She adjusted her position, and just as she was about to get a good look, the phone in her palm suddenly lit up again. What's going on? She picked up the phone, and Lu Shenxian's messages appeared on the screen. Where are you? It's very dangerous outside. You need to go back to school. Quote. Do you need me to come and find you? Where are you now? Gao Rushui did not reply. Lu Shenxian sent her more than 10 messages before she stopped. Just as Gao Rushui thought she had finally made it. The phone's camera suddenly opened on its own, and it captured Gao Rushui and the furniture around her. Oh, you're at home. I'm coming to find you now. Quote. A new message appeared, and Gao Rushui's scalp went numb. As she tried to switch off the phone, she looked out the window. The figure at the bottom of the building had disappeared. It appeared to have entered the stairwell. Her phone vibrated, and a new message came. I'm on the first floor. Following this message, Gao Rushui looked out the window. The third building was reflected on Shisha Lake, and the voice-activated lights on the first floor of the building had come on for some reason. I'm on the second floor now. Just as the message was sent, the lights on the second floor also came on. This thing was moving very fast. I'm on the third floor. I'm on the fourth floor. I'm on the fifth floor. I'm on the sixth floor. The lights all came on. Gao Rushui gripped her hair tightly. She looked at the messages that kept appearing on the screen. Her eyes were red, and she was on the verge of a breakdown. I'm on the 13th floor. I'm in the corridor now. Is your front door not closed properly? Footsteps came from the corridor. Something was rapidly approaching. The noise outside and the messages on the phone finally caused Gao Rushui to lose control. She stabbed at the phone repeatedly with the fruit knife until the screen was broken. Then she slammed it on the ground. The phone cracked, and everything appeared to be over. The voice-activated lights in the stairwell all went off, and Shisha Lake was shrouded in darkness again. The corridor suddenly became quiet, and there was not a single sound. Has it left? Gao Rushui walked to the phone, and the last message popped up on the cracked phone. I'm at your door. Bang! The knocking suddenly came. Initially, it was slow, but then the force increased. Gao Rushui felt like the whole door was shaking, and it did not sound like a human fist could make a sound. The thing is coming, it's just outside the door. The lights in the room flickered. Gao Rushui's expression twisted, and the deepest fear in her heart was aroused. She stood next to the window, and her heart raced. There was only fear and terror left in her eyes. Pulling back the curtain, Gao Rushui opened the window. She still had a way to leave this room. Sitting on the windowsill on the 13th floor, Gao Rushui felt like she was suffocating. Her hands gripped the window frame, and she looked at the ground. All the fear in her heart exploded at that moment. Her body slowly leaned forward, and just as she was about to let go, the front door was smashed open, and a man's voice appeared in Gao Rushui's ears. At 9:20 p.m., Chen Ge hailed a taxi to Western Zhejiang Medical University. After he got out, he realized that the school was more dilapidated than he had expected. It's so quiet. How come there's not a single student in sight? After paying the fare, Chen Ge carried his backpack and entered the campus. When he passed the gate, he purposely glanced at the guard, and the man did not stop him. I knew I didn't look like a bad person. There were many trees planted on both sides of the road. The school was very green, but it felt creepy walking alone. Where's the old education block? I think all the houses here are quite run down. Taking out his phone, Chen Ge called Gao Rushui. I'm already at your school. Where should I go to find you? Keep going from the southern gate, and you'll see an old building that's blocked off. That's the old education block. Come quickly. Gao Rushui's voice was low like she was hiding somewhere. My roommates know I'm out. I can feel them following behind me. I think they've discovered me. I advise you to call the police. Where are you now? Behind the education block. I'll hang up. I saw them. The call was hung up by Gao Rushui. Affected by her tone, Chen Ge shivered uncontrollably. He lifted his head to look at the sky. It seemed like it was going to rain, and the night was especially gloomy. When he first entered the school, Chen Ge could still see a few people, but as he walked deeper, he could not see anyone anymore. There's such a barren place at a medical university. Chen Ge took out his phone to do some research. He realized that Western Zhejiang Medical University and the Medical University were originally together, but after the Medical University moved to a new campus, the old campus only had the Medical University and one or two specialties. With fewer people, the campus naturally looked empty. The last mission for the School of the Afterlife is here. Chen Ge temporarily did not plan to accept this mission. At Coffin Village, he had Xu Yin's help, but with just him and Yan Danian, challenging a 3-star scenario would be suicide. If anything goes wrong, retreat immediately. Chen Ge placed the comic into his pocket. Yan Danian's third power should be the key to him dominating all the lesser red specters. After this is over, I should help him realize his dream. The black phone gave Yan Danian a very high review, which meant that this specter definitely had the potential to be nurtured. As he pondered the question, Chen Ge unknowingly walked deep into the campus and arrived at the place that Gao Rushui had mentioned on the phone. There were 2 dark buildings with a lock on the door. Standing on the ground floor and looking up, the black windows looked like eyes that were opened. I'm already here. Chen Ge held his phone. There's a warehouse at the corner of the first floor. They're looking for me. Gao Rushui's voice was very low, but her anxiety and fear could still be heard. A strange emotion spread in Chen Ge's heart. He frowned slightly. There was nothing strange about the surroundings, but something was not right. Is it because I'm worried about Gao Rushui's safety? Chen Ge did not hang up. He reached out to remove the lock on the door. Pulling open the door of the education block, Chen Ge walked in. There was not a single ray of light in the building, and the closed doors of the classrooms looked quite creepy. Ever since I left Muyang High School and Western Zhejiang Private Academy, I've rarely been afraid of classrooms, but after entering this building, I feel uneasy. Is there something scary hiding here? Is it related to the mission at the underground morgue? Quote. Chen Ge stopped at the door and kept the phone next to his ear so that he could contact Gao Rushui at any time. The corner of the first floor. Be careful, my 2 roommates. Gao Rushui suddenly stopped. There was the sound of a door being pushed open on the other end like something was pushing open the doors one by one. The door opened, and the sound got closer and closer to Gao Rushui. Even Chen Ge's heart skipped a beat like he was the one who was experiencing this scary scenario. The corner of the first floor. And we're going underground. Quote. Chen Ge still did not move, but at that moment, the recorder in his backpack pressed on its own, and it made a static sound. Xu Yin. It had been a day and a night since the hibernation at Coffin Village, and Xu Yin finally gave Chen Ge a reply. Normally, it was Chen Ge who turned on the recorder, but this time, it was Xu Yin who came to find Chen Ge. You've broken through. For specters below the level of a red specter, most of the time, they could only hide in their hosts and could not leave for long periods of time. Only a red specter could escape this limitation. Is Xu Yin trying to tell me something? A muffled voice came into his ears. Chen Ge listened for a long time before he understood Xu Yin's meaning. The sound of the door opening was getting closer, and the situation was getting more and more dangerous. Theoretically speaking, Chen Ge should have been affected by the situation. He should have become nervous, anxious, and panicked, but he was hugging the recorder, and there was a faint smile on his lips. Before the fear could form, it was drowned by joy. For Chen Ge, there was no better news than Shu Yin waking up. Chen Ge. Quick. They've found me. Quote. Gao Ru Shui's scream came from the phone. The door to the room that she was hiding in had been opened. She could not hide anymore and ran for her life. The sound of footsteps came from the phone, but strangely enough, the building was very quiet. It was impossible to tell where Gao Ru Shui was being chased. Shoving the recorder into his pocket, Chen Ge took a deep breath and put on a serious expression. He yelled into the phone, "Hold on a little longer. I'll be there in a minute." Quote. He took out the hammer and ran to the corner of the stairs. He kicked open the door that was not locked. There was no light on the first floor. Thanks to his yin-yang vision, Chen Ge could barely see that there were 3 figures running down the other side of the corridor. Gao Ru Shui. Chen Ge rushed over with the hammer. When he was halfway there, he felt his body slowly turn cold, and a chilling presence surrounded him. However, due to his trust in Shu Yin, Chen Ge continued forward. When he reached the stairs that led to the second floor, Shu Yin warned him to stop. There's a problem with the second floor. Chen Ge stopped and started to retreat. He suddenly retreated and didn't follow. After a few seconds, a terrifying scene appeared. At the corner, 3 figures covered in blood poked their heads out. The 3 were in cahoots, and they had been waiting for Chen Ge. Chen Ge stopped moving and looked ahead. I almost ran into it. Let me guess, your real trap should be on the second floor of the basement, right? The 3 figures walked out from the corner, and the underground tunnel became even colder. Their bodies were slightly stiff, as if they were dead. You're right, but you've already missed the best chance to escape. The voice came from the phone, and it was laced with venom and resentment. You're not Gao Ru Shui. Chen Ge placed the phone next to his ear and did not show much panic. Isn't it too late for you to realize that now? Gao Ru Shui's voice turned shrill and shrill. Actually, when you called me at 6 a.m. this morning, I already knew you weren't Gao Ru Shui. Chen Ge looked relaxed. At the time, I called Heshan first to ask why he was looking for me. Not long after I hung up, you called me. You told me that you couldn't reach anyone other than me last night, but I checked the messages on social media. And between 1 and 3:00 last night, both you and He-san contacted me. Quote. If what you said is true, then how did Heshan find out about this? Therefore, the answer is very simple. You were the one who called me from the beginning. You tried to trick me out last night, but unfortunately, my phone was not in the service area, and I couldn't get through to you. You couldn't reach me no matter how you tried, so the whole plan could only be carried out tonight. And most importantly, if you really went through such a scary thing, you should have come to find me in the morning, but not only did you not come to find me, you even suggested that we have dinner together tonight to solve this problem. I've been curious, why did you insist on dragging it out until night? It was then that I was 80% sure you weren't Gao Ru Shui. Quote. The power went out at home, and this chapter was written at an internet cafe, so the plot was a bit rushed. To explain the phone ghost's plot, one of the readers mentioned this question in the comment section. When a person is afraid, the first thing they should do is ask for help from someone who has the ability to solve the problem. Go to the police station to hide, go to the temple to ask for help, and so on. Actually, he did not understand this plot at all. I have already given you the answer in chapters 342 and 343, which is 20 chapters ago. When he left Coffin Village, Chen Ge saw the messages from Heshan and Gao Ru Shui on his phone. When Wei reported to Captain Yan, Chen Ge logged into his social media account and realized that between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m., Heshan and Gao Ru Shui had sent him many messages. They appeared to be very important. After saying that, both Heshan and Gao Ru Shui messaged Chen Ge in the middle of the night. However, in the last chapter, Gao Ru Shui said that only Chen Ge's number could be reached. This was an obvious mistake. From then on, it was not a human calling Chen Ge but a ghost calling Chen Ge. It just wanted to find an excuse to lure Chen Ge to the university's morgue. In the next 3 chapters, when I was describing Gao Rushui did not mention that Chen Ge would come, and she did not mention anything about having dinner that night. She only kept calling Chen Ge, wondering if something had happened to Chen Ge. She did not know about this promise because the promise she made with Chen Ge was a ghost. The roommates were all told by the ghost, and the ghost might not be lying. Without spoiling the plot, I can only say that Gao Rushui was the one in trouble, and the ghost had been following her. Some of the friends asked why they did not go to the police station to look for Captain Yan first. Looking for Captain Yan was chapter 358, and the title of that chapter was called, Their Real Goal. The title was already spoiled. Their real goal was Chen Ge and the door at his haunted house. Gao Rushui was just a cover, the enemy's real target had always been Chen Ge. As for why they chose Gao Rushui, that was another clue that would be used soon. The phone spirit was very useful. He could incite fear and control the phone. Actually, I had planned to give him a lot of scenes. Through the difference in information, he could create 2 different scares. Then, I could use the different performances of Chen Ge and Gao Rushui to write a story. At the same time, I could point out the phone spirit's ability to scare people without appearing. That way, it would not stand out too much in the haunted house. The recorder was switched on, and following the sound of static, an extremely chilling presence radiated from Chen Ge's body. Blood flowed, and in the darkness, a dark red arm grabbed Chen Ge's phone. The blood vessels spread, and Gao Rushui screamed in pain. Does it hurt? A familiar voice appeared in Chen Ge's ears, and Shuyin walked out from the shadows. Before Chen Ge said anything, Shuyin had already charged at the 3 ghosts at the end of the corridor. His voice seemed to carry some kind of magic. Whenever he spoke, the 3 ghosts would stop moving like their minds were greatly affected. This is Shuyin's new power after he became a red specter. His voice can disturb other ghosts. Quote. Chen Ge held the cold phone. Ever since Shuyin's blood vessels cleaned the phone, Chen Ge had gotten rid of the phone's influence. The world in his eyes had returned to normal, and the fear in his heart had disappeared. Lowering his head to look at the phone that had returned to normal, Chen Ge started to worry about the phone spirit's safety. It won't disappear just like that, right? Shuyin is a good person, but he's too reckless. This phone spirit can trigger the fear in people's hearts and can interfere with the phone. Isn't such a perfect ghost what my haunted house needs? Quote. There were many people like Brother Wong from the futuristic theme park. The guides and diagrams for the low-level haunted house scenarios could be easily found online. The visitors kept taking pictures inside the haunted house, and some of them even entered the haunted house with malicious intent to expose new scenarios. Chen Ge was alone, and he did not have the time or energy to stop the visitors. If he had the phone spirit's help, the situation would be much better. He shouldn't be killed directly. Even though he was the enemy, Chen Ge still worried for the phone spirit. He felt like he was being too kind. A sensitive person like me often neglects myself because I care about others. That's not good. Perhaps I should be more selfish. There was no suspense in the fight at the end of the corridor, but the scene was a little bloody. Chen Ge watched calmly as Shu Yin tore his opponent to shreds, but his mind was thinking about other things. The phone spirit purposely lured me to this building, but he didn't set up a trap here. Looks like the Society of Strange Tales' real concern is the door inside the haunted house, and killing me isn't their main goal. Of course, this might also be because their strength has declined too much, and they really can't spare any extra manpower. Quote. The 5 eye gouging murders surrounded New Century Park. The Society of Strange Tales' original target was the door inside the haunted house. They seem to be preparing a special ritual to lure me away. Are they worried that I will destroy their ritual? Not to mention anything else, Chen Ge was very confident in his destructive power. The more the enemy doesn't want to see, the more I want them to see. Chen Ge called out Shu Yin's name and prepared to return to New Century Park. He called out several times, but there was no response from Shu Yin. After consuming the 3 ghosts, Shu Yin stood at the corner of the stairwell. He seemed to be confronting something, and his body was covered in wounds. When he got closer, Chen Ge also noticed that something was wrong. The first and second basement floors were separated by a steel door, but the lock on the door had been opened. Cold wind kept blowing out from underground, and there were several wet footprints on the stairs. Squatting down, Chen Ge used his fingertip to rub at it before placing it under his nose. Formalin. Chen Ge had no idea how many floors there were in the education block, and he did not want to bring trouble to himself. Shu Yin, let's go. There was something underneath the building that made Shu Yin feel threatened, and that was not good news for Chen Ge. After calling him 3 times, Shu Yin finally turned around. When he faced Chen Ge, his expression was much more relaxed, and even his pain seemed to have subsided. This was the first time that Chen Ge had seen Shu Yin at such a close distance after he woke up. Red blood seeped out from the wounds and mingled with the bloody shirt, but to Chen Ge's surprise, the blood shirt purposely avoided the spot where Shu Yin's heart would be. He was wearing a red shirt, but there was an empty spot around his heart that was not dyed red by the blood. Why isn't there any change around the heart? Chen Ge looked at Shu Yin. He checked the black phone, and there was no change to Shu Yin's status. He had no idea whether Shu Yin could be considered a red specter or not. This is different from Zhang Ya. That person is dressed in red. Is there a hidden condition to becoming a red specter? Chen Ge tried to communicate with Shu Yin, but Shu Yin was even more confused. He did not know anything. Could it be related to the door? In Coffin Village, the Society of Strange Tales only used a few days to turn Shangqing into a red specter. Could the key to becoming a red specter be the black blood that can only be found behind the door? Then how did Zhang Ya become a red specter? Quote. Chen Ge realized that he knew too little about that world. After having Shu Yin return to the tape, he ran out of the education block with his backpack. The coldness on his body had dissipated. Chen Ge took out his phone to call Gao Rushui. His phone had returned to normal, but Gao Rushui's phone was still busy. The Society of Strange Tales wants to use Gao Rushui's name to lure me to the school, so they definitely won't let Gao Rushui meet me, so they'll send Gao Rushui away. The phone ghost could trigger emotions and put people in a constant state of fear. Worried about Gao Rushui's safety, Chen Ge called Dr. Gao directly. Without the influence of the phone ghost, Chen Ge managed to get through to the real Dr. Gao. He told Dr. Gao everything that might have happened to Gao Rushui. Hearing that his daughter might have been targeted by several crazed murderers, Dr. Gao could not care less. As he called the police, he contacted the school's management. The counselor found Gao Rushui's roommates, but Gao Rushui's roommates had no idea where she was. They only felt that Gao Rushui had a lot on her mind that day, probably because she had a new boyfriend. The investigation continued until it was almost 10 p.m. In the end, a security guard at the school's entrance found an important clue. Half an hour ago, a kind taxi driver came to the entrance of the medical school and handed a glass and a book with Gao Rushui's name on it to the security guard. The driver said that the girl had left the school in a hurry and had forgotten to take the book and glass with her. He had no idea where the girl lived, so he returned to the school and hoped that the security guard would return the book and glass to the girl. The driver's unintentional kindness revealed a message: Gao Rushui had returned home. After getting his address from Dr. Gao, Chen Ge carried his backpack and hailed a taxi to get to Shishahu. The neighborhood had a beautiful environment, but its location was not very good. It was a little remote. At around 10 p.m., Chen Ge found out the exact location of his home from Dr. Gao. He looked in that direction, and there was a house on the same floor that was brightly lit like all the lights in the house had been switched on. That should be the house. The window was closed, and there was a woman standing behind the curtain. The woman looked nervous, and she kept pulling the curtain back to look down. Gao Rushui. The woman saw Chen Ge, but she did not show any surprise. Instead, her face was filled with fear like she had seen something scary. Looks like the phone spirit is affecting her. When a person was given a shock that exceeded their limit, they would faint. That was the human body's self-defense mechanism. However, the terror created by the phone spirit was different from this kind of sudden shock. It used the victim's own fear to slowly torture the victim until they were on the verge of mental breakdown. In such a state, the subject might be driven crazy or do something extremely irrational. Please don't do anything stupid. Chen Ge rushed into the stairwell and pressed the button for the elevator, but it stopped at the 13th floor. He had no choice but to climb the stairs. After completing so many missions given by the black phone, compared to logical thinking and courage, Chen Ge felt like his physical strength had improved the most. Activating the recorder, holding the hammer, Chen Ge did not care about scaring the tenants inside the building. He ran up the stairs as fast as he could. The voice-activated lights came on, and Chen Ge reached the 13th floor in one go. In the empty corridor, one of the doors was left open, and it stood out like a sore thumb. Found it. Chen Ge rushed to the door and called Gao Rushui's name, but there was no reply from inside the house. He could only hear Gao Rushui's groan of pain and the sound of something breaking. The girl who was calm and rational in his impression appeared to have gone mad. Chen Ge did not dare waste any more time. He raised the hammer and smashed at the door. Bang! With all his might, the blood vessels in the hammer moved. Chen Ge had lost count of how many times he had smashed the door before the lock finally broke. Holding the hammer, Chen Ge rushed into the room. He saw Gao Rushui's upper body leaning out the window. What was even more terrifying was that there was a scrawny child on top of her head. The child hugged her head and used his body to block her ears. His hands covered her eyes tightly. Shu Yin. Chen Ge's scream could be heard from several floors above. All the lights in the room went out at that moment, and the air seemed to freeze. A blood-red figure pounced at Gao Rushui. Seeing Shu Yin come over, the child on Gao Rushui's head looked terrified. Without any hesitation, he let go and disappeared. Gao Rushui's senses returned to normal. Before she could react, she saw a red-clothed evil ghost with wounds all over its body pouncing at her. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out of her throat. Her hands were powerless, and she let her body fall backwards. Hold on tight. The familiar voice appeared again, and Gao Rushui's eyes slowly focused. The evil ghost in the room had disappeared, and only Chen Ge was holding onto her arm. The lights were off. Gao Rushui looked at the man standing in the dark, and her mind slowly returned to normal. Stepping on the windowsill, Chen Ge used all his strength to pull Gao Rushui up. Looking at Gao Rushui, who was still in shock, Chen Ge's heart was racing. Thankfully, the front door was open. If that door was locked, I wouldn't have been able to get in so quickly. Sitting on the ground, Chen Ge was still worried about Gao Rushui. He dragged her to the sofa. Everything's fine now. Rest well. I'll go call Dr. Gao. About 10 minutes later, the lights in the room came back on, and footsteps echoed down the corridor. Chen Ge lifted his head, and he realized it was Dr. Gao. He looked completely different from his usual self. He had lost the confidence and grace of a mature man, and his eyes were filled with worry. Xiao Shui. Leaning against the sofa, Dr. Gao grabbed Gao Rushui's hand. The usually cold Gao Rushui finally showed her vulnerable side. Silently putting the hammer back into his backpack, Chen Ge picked up Gao Rushui's broken phone and walked out the door alone. That was not the end of the night. He had to get the phone spirit. A baleful specter below the rank of red specter can't be exposed for long. They have to possess something, so the phone spirit can't have gotten far. Chen Ge did not chase blindly, his mind was clear. When I entered the building to take the elevator stopped at the 13th floor. At the time, the phone spirit was lying on top of Gao Rushui's head to fool her, so it has to be another person or ghost that stopped the elevator from going down. There was obviously someone behind the phone spirit, and that person was probably the person who had blocked the elevator door to stop the elevator from going down. If it was just to lure Gao Rushui away, he wouldn't have done this because he had no reason to kill Gao Rushui. If the plan fails, the best choice would be to leave. If I forcefully kill him now, I'll only expose myself more. Quote. Why did he suddenly change his mind and want to kill Gao Rushui? Several answers appeared in Chen Ge's mind, and the most likely one was that Gao Rushui had accidentally seen the killer. Since Gao Rushui had seen the killer, to prevent himself from being exposed, the killer changed his mind and wanted to kill her. Controlling the phone spirit to lure me out of New Century Park and then to lure Gao Rushui somewhere else, the mastermind should be the Society of Strange Tales. Chen Ge leaned against the wall and looked out the window. All the clues in his mind were connected. After tonight, the Society of Strange Tales should only have one person left. Chen Ge returned to the room and had Dr. Gao go to the residential area to check the surveillance on the 13th floor. He squatted down beside the sofa and waited until Dr. Gao left before asking, "Did you run into any strange people on the way home?" Strange people. Gao Rushui thought about it. The driver who drove me home was very suspicious. He kept telling me stories about the eye-gouging murder. Was there anyone else other than him? Gao Rushui was influenced by the phone spirit, and no matter what she saw, she would associate it with the scariest possibility. After thinking for a while, Gao Rushui suddenly said, "When I was about to take the elevator, a man wearing an extra-large raincoat came out from the elevator, and I ran into him." A raincoat. Chen Ge perked up. Did you see his face?